there's been a lot of studies that show there have been a lot of increase in solar activity in recent decades. The sun is acting up. There's a lot more activity than there used to be. There's rumors and fears of asteroids. There's a lot of articles published and on the web and all over where people are seriously afraid that there's asteroids out there that we're going to miss, that we're not going to see, and they're going to hit the Earth and cause a catastrophe. There's things like hidden planets like Nibiru, where we don't know that there's a planet out there, and it'd be kind of hard to hide a planet, but what they found is that there's gravitational force somewhere in our solar system that can't be accounted for by any of the known planets, and that's why they think, there's this idea that there's a hidden planet out there, and they call it Nibiru. We don't know what it is, but we do know that there's some kind of gravitational force out in our solar system that we can't see. So there's definitely sights and signs in the heavens. There's things going on that we can't explain.
Something fascinating happens when the sun becomes more active. A thing called plasma waterfall or polar crown prominence, PCP. It's like a mini eruption that starts on the sun, and it seems like it tries to get away, But then the sun's magnetic field pulls it back before it can escape into space. And this plasma waterfall's really spectacular. It goes up to 62,000 miles above the surface. It's like you stack 8 Earths on top of each other. Then there's something called a polar vortex. It's like a gigantic halo of plasma that rotates around the sun's north pole really fast. This vortex happens when a large tentacle of plasma snaps apart and falls back toward the surface, similar to how a plasma waterfall forms. Scientists don't know why this plasma stays above the sun's surface for so long. And one of the cool examples of CMEs was a giant one in the shape of a butterfly in March this year. It got such an unusual shape because it exploded on the side of the sun we couldn't see, so it was impossible to fully measure how strong it was. Fortunately, that one didn't explode in our direction, but it might have hit Mercury a little bit. And it's possible it knocked off some dust and gas since Mercury has a weak magnetic field. All this sounds cool in theory, but it's not such good news for us. Because of all this, we might experience more intense solar storms that can, again, lead to geomagnetic storms on Earth. And these don't just sound alarming, they indeed are. They create chaos and disrupt the magnetic field of our planet. Geomagnetic storms can create beautiful northern lights, true. But we'd all rather enjoy such beauties as the aurora borealis in regular conditions, or just watch a good old sunset above the ocean. It's not that every solar storm will necessarily hit Earth, even if there are more of them. To reach our planet, they must be pointed in the right direction at the right moment. But if that happens, the storm can ionize the upper atmosphere, and bye-bye our communications. It can cause temporary blackouts for systems such as GPS and radio. It isn't necessarily a big problem on its own, but it can be very dangerous if it happens at the wrong time, like during a tsunami or an earthquake. The storms can also damage electrical infrastructure, like rail lines and power grids. If you're on a plane at that time, you might be exposed to higher levels of radiation. It's still not clear how dangerous that will be for you, but it can be a serious problem for astronauts in space. When solar storms mess with the magnetic field, this can affect the migrations of some animals, such as sea turtles, whales, and birds. Since things in the animal kingdom mostly work in the natural order, who knows how these animals go through or even survive such changes? And when the sun is at a maximum of its activity, satellites in space are in trouble too. We have more satellites in space than ever before. And when the upper atmosphere becomes denser because of all these changes, this can push satellites in different directions. They might crash into one another, or some can even fall back to Earth, which again is only cool in movies with superheroes who can relatively easily deal with this stuff. Hopefully, we'll avoid a massive solar storm like the Carrington event. The story was similar. In August 1859, astronomers across the globe watched how the number of sunspots was getting bigger and bigger. A man named Richard Carrington was among them. At the beginning of September, he was sketching the sunspots when, out of a sudden, he was blinded by a flash of light. It lasted around 5 minutes, but it was spectacular. He later described it as a white light flare. It was a very strong coronal mass ejection, CME, and in only 17.6 hours, this storm crossed the long way between the sun and our home planet, 90 million miles, and unleashed its force on us, even though this usually takes days. And when this storm started, telegraph machines across the world sparked. Operators got electric shocks, and paper even caught fire. People were really scared and confused because they had never seen such bright skies before. Some even thought it was the end of the world. The next day, telegraph workers still couldn't work properly because Earth's atmosphere was still charged. They even managed to send messages using the auroral current instead of regular electricity. But it brought something incredible, 2 stunning auroras in the sky. People in Hawaii and Cuba could see beautiful northern lights, while those as far north as Chile could see the southern lights. It's all slowly but steadily escalating. Take solar flares, for example. These are powerful bursts of energy from the sun. In 2022, there were 5 times more of these flares compared to the previous year. Plus the strongest ones, X-class flares, have been getting stronger and more common than before too. And this might be way more extreme than anyone thought. All this might sound very bad at first, but don't worry, solar flares won't destroy our planet. They do send charged solar material toward us at pretty high speeds. But it's not like we're completely doomed if these things hit us. Our planet won't leave us unprotected. We still have the atmosphere and magnetic field that keep us relatively safe. Our thick atmosphere is like a shield that blocks radiation that might harm us. So these solar flares can mostly affect technology, but they won't destroy Earth. I guess we have our own superheroes after all.
Well, scientists say a powerful solar flare temporarily knocked out radio communications on Earth yesterday.
We asked next weather meteorologist Adam Del Rosso to explain what happened and what other things we may see this weekend.
It's yet another impact from this active solar cycle. This time, a strong solar flare, along with what's called a radio burst, shooting a wave of energy and radiation right at planet Earth.
The strength we saw yesterday on those particular bands was almost 10,000 times the normal background that comes from the sun.
Sean Dahl with the Space Weather Prediction Center in Colorado says this is the largest flare since 2017 and possibly one of the largest ever recorded.
Any space weather event coming from the sun will not harm you as long as you're on the surface of our planet. There are industries that could be impacted, though, like our technologies, GPS accuracy, communication issues as we experienced during the event yesterday.
FAA facilities across the country reporting those issues Thursday afternoon. One employee saying they've never seen anything like it. Forecasters say this storm could also lead to the northern lights over the next several days, with even more solar storms to come.
Between now and all the way up through 2025, perhaps even into the initial part of 2026, we could still have pretty notable space weather activity going on if things continue.
Adam Del Rosso, WCCO News.
Thursday, the largest solar flare in years happened, and it was strong enough to feel the effects here on Earth. Natalie Nunn is here to show that and how it happened with some video for us. Natalie.
Yeah, this video was released from NASA. Now, a solar flare is best described as a powerful burst of energy erupting from the sun's surface. And according to NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory, or the SDO, the solar flare was classified as an X 2.8 flare. X class denotes the most intense flares, while the number shows information about its strength. This was the strongest solar flare since September of 2017 and possibly one of the largest radio events ever recorded. So what does that have to do with us here on Earth? Well, this particular flare caused radio frequency blackouts primarily in South America for about 2 hours. Now, we also have more activity on the sun, which can lead to more solar activity, which means northern lights, possibly even some that we could see here in the Ozarks. We are seeing active time for the aurora borealis as they have dipped as far south as Texas recently. And the Space Weather Prediction Center says solar forces are predicted to peak next year. So this should give us more chances at spotting the nighttime light show.
Hey, what's going on there, folks? Welcome back here to another update on this Thursday, February 22nd, 2024. It's about 10:33 a.m. here, California time. Latest activity on the Earthquake 3D globe looks like a one-pointer. Did see a little bit of uptick last night. Nothing major going on since those two large flares kicked off last night. But there is some stuff stirring up there on the internet and social media lately. And I'm here to try and clear up the confusion here when it comes to solar flare activity and things going down. You know, power grid, navigation systems, obviously that can have an effect there, negative from solar flare activity. But this activity that's really stirring up this morning across social media with regards to a massive outage here in the cell phone network, various issues going on there across the area, from anywhere from AT&T, Cricket, Verizon, T-Mobile, lots of stuff going on in terms of not functioning like it should, right? Now, all of this is not related to a solar flare or the two solar flares that we've seen last night. I'm getting some reports as well now on social media that there's some pharmaceutical companies being attacked from some type of cyber attack going on. So it just happens. Maybe they did it. Maybe they decided to pull the strings there following these flares just to put people in a panic, right? Because solar flare activity, they've been pushing that issue here recently that, power grids can go down, and the solar cycle 25 maximum is coming up here. And, a lot of fear mongering going on out there in social media and also the mainstream news media. So I'm kind of here to just put an end to some of that. Obviously, we did have a couple large flares last night, 2 X flares to be exact. None of these were impulsive in terms, these were impulsive, but none were eruptive in terms of, ejecting a material there out into space. So these flares here, folks, definitely can have an effect here on this planet, but not associated with pharmaceutical companies going down, other issues going on, with cellular networks. That is all some type of cyber hack that, it's possible they thought, well, there's some flares going on. This pull the strings here and cause a little bit of panic here in the world, or at least here in the States. I don't know if this was a worldwide outage there in terms of cellular network, but I don't think so. So here is the effects here in terms of radiation storms that are produced by these flares, right? Now, I think we've seen an S3 here last night during the X flares. Those create radio blackouts on the sunlit side of the Earth. And last night, there was no sun up in the sky. So obviously, the strong radiation storm was produced over on the opposite side of the country, opposite side of the world from the U.S. Now, strong S3 system, basically, there can be effects there in the satellite operations and HF radio propagation through the polar regions and navigation positions errors likely, but not associated with cellular networks. And even at that, high-frequency communication systems possible through the polar regions and position errors make navigation operations extremely difficult. So we're not looking at cellular networks going down. The power grids would go down due to the overloading of the system from a CME. But we don't have any CME headed this way. This is all, events from last night in terms of the flaring activity. It's not associated at all with the cellular networks going down. And again, it's not only cellular. It looks like there's some other internet issues going on. And the pharmaceutical companies, it's just somebody is behind it. Whoever it is, I'm not going to comment further on it, but I'm just here to kind of point out that, this activity is not associated with the flaring activity. We've seen a larger X flare earlier this year, and that was centered over, I believe, the Pacific Ocean in terms of the daylight area of the Earth. And the position that the Earth was facing the sun. So that did nothing. We didn't see any cell phone outages. We've seen many X flares throughout the solar cycle and bigger ones than what we've seen last night. So definitely someone behind this cyber attack.
It came out of nowhere. A bright speck in the sky, soon streaking across the horizon, followed by an almost apocalyptic scene, a blinding flash of light. And then all hell broke loose. Dizzying explosions, shattering windows, knocking these office workers to the ground. These students were lucky, protected by curtains from the flying glass, and these men barely escaped the blast. In the streets, pandemonium. Terrified residents thought the world was ending. People started to panic. Somebody screamed, "The end of the earth," he says. The chaos of the meteor was captured on cell phones and on dashboard cameras of cars, so popular here in Russia. The blast was so powerful it knocked down a wall at this factory. In all, over 1,200 people were injured, mostly from broken glass. 3,000 buildings damaged, over 1 million square feet of glass shattered. Many were injured after going to the window to check out the flash in the sky. The glass shattered and bounced back on me. My beard was cut open, this man says. The meteor was believed to be about 50 feet wide, weighing a whopping 7,700 tons. That's about the same as the Eiffel Tower. It raced towards Earth at over 40,000 miles per hour. As it crashed into the atmosphere, it began to break into pieces, causing those booms and sending those powerful shockwaves towards the ground. rocking a zone stretching hundreds of miles away, those shockwaves causing all of the damage. As for the pieces of the meteor, one of the bigger chunks landing here, leaving that massive hole in the frozen lake.
It's been almost 10 years since little Pluto was demoted from being a planet, but today scientists from the California Institute of Technology have announced that they finally have solid evidence for a planet X, a true ninth planet on the edge of our solar system.
While the ninth planet has not officially or technically been spotted yet, it is believed to be far beyond the orbit of Pluto, roughly the size of Neptune, with a mass 10 times that of Earth.
Staff writer for the Scientific American, Michael Lemonick, has written an article in the upcoming issue and is here to tell us more about this incredible discovery. Hi, Michael.
Hi.
So how did this discovery come about?
It came about because there are things out there, little icy objects that are orbiting in a funny way, and nobody was quite sure why. It seemed like there might be something with gravity pulling on them, but nobody quite understood. And finally, these scientists that you talked about took a really hard look at it, did simulations, calculations, and they came up with the explanation: it probably is this giant planet.
I think I read somewhere it orbits the sun every 10,000 to 20,000 years.
Right.
Is that why no one has seen it to this point?
No, that's not why. It's because it's so dim. It's so far away that even though it's big, it's very, very dim, and it'd be very tough to spot with a telescope.
I'm also fascinated at the idea that this planet could be so far out there and still our sun be the mass that is keeping it in the gravitational pull of our solar system.
Right, yeah, but no, it's true.
That's incredible. And so there was a thought at one point from scientists that when they thought that there was something beyond Pluto, that it might have been all the massive objects floating in the Kuiper Belt, but it's not.
Right, so all those objects are out there and they have a lot of mass, and originally the scientists said, look, a planet is such a crazy idea, maybe it's the Kuiper Belt itself that's pulling it on itself and making these orbits look funny. And they ran simulations and they tried to make that work, and it didn't work. It just didn't work. There's not enough stuff out there.
What does this tell us about our solar system?
Well, one thing it tells us is that we don't really understand it as well as we thought we did. And another is that it probably had a very violent beginning. This thing was probably formed much closer in and then flung out, maybe in a close encounter with Jupiter or something.
Wow, that is really incredible. And when we talk about the mass of this planet X, this ninth planet, being 10 times that of Earth, for those who are not scientists, what does that really mean, the mass of a planet versus Earth's mass?
Well, if you could put it on a scale, how much it would weigh.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really it. And so it's bigger, it's bulkier, it's got more heft, it's got more gravity. It's this huge elephant in the living room, except we didn't know it was there.
You mentioned that scientists haven't seen it yet because of how far away it is and how dim it is. Is there a way for them to get visual evidence?
Yes, so the biggest telescopes in the world can theoretically see this thing if they're looking in exactly the right place. And with the publication of this new paper today, they are now going to start to look in earnest.
This is such a fascinating, and again, a lot of scientists believe that by figuring out that there is this ninth planet out there, that will give us even more insight into the birth of our solar system.
There was little enough material in the inner solar system that Earth and those other planets kind of formed, and that was it. But further out, where there was a lot more gas and a lot more large objects, it got really kind of violent.
Just really quickly, I'm wondering if you can put into perspective for us how much further out there is this planet X than the rest of the planets in the solar system? I mean,
so Pluto we think of as the really out at the very edge, the very farthest thing that you could call a planet, even though we don't anymore. And
I'm still supporting Pluto's right to be a planet.
But this thing is 5 times further out than Pluto.
Fascinating. Is there any chance it's not a planet?
No, there's always. It's very foolish to say no chance because you just don't know what you don't know. But the odds are looking very, very good.
60 billion miles from the sun.
Yep.
Amazing stuff. Michael Lemonick, thank you so much. Fascinating stuff.
Great, thanks.